Hello and welcome. I'm Praveer, and today's session is a fourfold quantum-based source of energy. I'll start with a brief introduction. And in this introduction, I'm going to provide a gist of this paper. Then we'll transition to a connecting fourfold pattern and a symmetrical light-based model. And this will lead us into the gist of this paper, which is a quantum level-based source of energy, and then subsequently a device to detect what I call the organizing quantum energy, and with a summary and conclusion. So the gist of the paper is the following. So there's fundamental building blocks of matter, from atoms to molecules to cells, and all are intricate arrangements of quantum particles hinting at the existence of a pervasive quantum level energy source. Everything is made from quantum particles. Now, by recognizing a function-based fractal pattern that connects the layers of matter and life, and by conceptualizing light as a multi-layered symmetrical structure from which the fractal pattern that connects all the layers of matter and life arises, this paper will propose a new paradigm of quantum energy. And this quantum energy is composed of four distinct functional as opposed to physical elements related to the concepts of knowledge, power, presence, and harmony. The organizing quantum energy is proposed to also play a pivotal role in the shaping of the fourfold architecture of the cosmos. So this starts from the fourfold macro parameters of space-time energy gravity, the four categories within the standard model of quarks, leptons, bosons, and the Higgs boson, the four categories within the periodic table of S group, P group, E group, and F group elements, and finally, the fourfold composition of living cells that are nucleic acids, polysaccharides, proteins, and lipids. There are other fourfold patterns, but I'm not going to go into that in this paper. So this paper suggests further that this OQE, or organizing quantum energy, can be detected through material means, and it proposes capacitor chambers, devices made with capacitor chambers, to basically resonate with the unique essence of the four OQEs. These detection devices can be constructed using architectures that are resonant with the electromagnetic, quantum particle, atom, or cellular levels. So there's four different types of devices that are proposed. Now, this new perspective of an organizing quantum energy opens up avenues for further exploration and potential applications in several fields, including physics, chemistry, biology, systems engineering, modeling, and so on. So the introductory hypothesis before I launch into this is the following. Or it's based on the following, and I'll introduce the hypothesis toward the end. We are aware of a vast amount of energy encased within the quantum particle constructed atom. So this is evident in the process of nuclear fusion that powers stars. So this gives us a sense already of the levels of energy that are due to quantum dynamics. And then more recently, we have some researchers in Japan and Germany who, harnessing the laws of quantum mechanics, have created a tiny quantum engine. And it's evident that there's likely an untapped source of energy in the very small that can be leveraged in different ways. And as I said, this model, and what I'm going to go over in the next 15 minutes or so, is a proposal for a model to perceive and leverage different quantum-based source of energy. So the hypothesis is that this quantum-based source of energy can be thought of as being the origin from which quantum particles, atoms, and molecular plans in cells arise. So let's dive into this connecting fourfold pattern. Let's first consider the province or the level of granularity of the cell. So when we look at the cell, we know there's four molecular plans that animate any living cell, whether it's plant, human, or animal. And these are nucleic acids, proteins, lipids, and polysaccharides. Now, if we look at the nature of what these stand for in their essence, it should become clear that nucleic acids is a function of knowledge because they are instrumental in the creation of DNA in the library of the cells, in the passing of information from one generation of cells to the other, and so on. And further, the DNA, of course, then provides the instructions for every other component of the cell to act. Now, when we look at proteins, it should be evident that it's a function of what I'm calling presence, because in a human cell, for example, there are over 30,000 different proteins that have all kinds of functionality, and they're pervasively present in the cell, doing all kinds of things. When we look at lipids, it's evident that it should be a function of harmony. And this is because we have lipids that create compartments in cells, allow work specialization, and allow harmony to exist in the cell. And when we look at polysaccharides, the fourth molecular plan, it should be evident that it's a function of power, because these chains of sugar molecules basically provide energy for the cell to conduct lots of activity. So if we denominate the essence of these different molecular plans, we can say that nucleic acids is related to something that we're calling knowledge, proteins is something we're calling presence, lipids to harmony, and polysaccharides to power. Now let's look at the level of atoms. So we know that the periodic table is structured into four categories. We have the P shell atoms, D shell, F shell, and S shell. Now, if we look at the S shell, for example, we know that this contains elements like hydrogen and helium that power suns. So we can intuit that this S shell has something to do with power. There's a correlation with power. When we look at the F group elements or F shell elements, these are the largest atoms that exist with the largest atomic numbers. So it's an experiment in collectivity. So it has something to do with harmony. When we look at D group or D shell atoms, then these are the elements that inform our infrastructure, build cities, build roads, stuff like iron, nickel, cobalt, aluminum, steel, and so on. And so these, it should be evident that there's a correlation with presence. And when we look at P shell atoms, then we have stuff like carbon or silicon that is related to computing machinery, animate and inanimate. And further, there's different archetypes within the P group that are related to categories like metals, metalloids, non-metals, and so on. And so we can see that there's a correlation between the P shell and something that we're calling knowledge. Now, when we go further to the quantum particle level, then again, we can see this same pattern showing up, this pattern of knowledge, presence, harmony, and power. If you look at leptons, for instance, then using electron as a surrogate for that, we know that the release or capture of electron is usually accompanied by large amounts of power. So there's a correlation between leptons and power. When we look at bosons, we know that they're instrumental in connecting any other quantum particle together. So there's a correlation with harmony. When we look at the Higgs boson, we know that any quantum particle that has mass has to interact with the Higgs field for the Higgs boson. And so there is a correlation with presence. And when we look at quarks, we know that quarks create are instrumental, or the instrumental components of protons and number of protons determine the behavior of an atom in the universe. So there is a correlation with what we're calling knowledge. And similarly, when we go down to the electromagnetic spectrum level, then we can say that the range of wavelengths from the very long to the very short, each proposing a different technology and a different way of operation, there's a correlation with this thing we're calling knowledge. When we look at the speed of the electromagnetic spectrum, which is the speed of light, then as I'll show in just a few minutes, this is instrumental to the creation of harmony. But simply we can think about it is that since light's traveling at a constant speed, then it provides variability to occur, space-time, energy, gravity, uh, can all emerge on this stable structure. We can also see that there's something that relates to the kind of mass or matter that can arise. And this is, again, by taking different factors of the electromagnetic spectrum, we can intuit that this has to do with presence. And then, of course, there's the correlation that as the frequency goes up, there's more power that's displayed by the photons in the electromagnetic spectrum. And so there's a correlation with power. So what we're seeing here is that as we cut across different layers of matter and life, then there's a connecting fourfold pattern that is of the nature of knowledge, presence, harmony, and power. Now, let me step back and consider this conceptual symmetrical model of light that's basically creates different mathematical spaces. And we can start with just thinking about light traveling infinitely fast. And if light were to travel infinitely fast, it would then be present in whatever volume we're considering instantaneously. So it would have this property of presence. It would also have a property of power because it would overcome anything that's not the nature of light. Since everything is happening, appearing, disappearing within the fabric of light, light would have an instantaneous knowledge of everything in its space. So it's correlated, or it has this immanent property of knowledge. And similarly, since everything is connected in the nature of light, we would have this property of harmony. So now in this, what I call a light matrix, there's a process of quantization that occurs. And this quantization takes this conception of mathematical space, and through the device of making light travel slower, so it's projected at some speed less than infinity, this allows what's invisible in these four structures to become more visible. So there's a differentiation due to the quantization into four different sets of present power, knowledge, and harmony. There's a further quantization that then differentiates what's in these sets further by creating an infinite number of unique elements that are all correlated to different elements in, so there's unique combinations of elements from these four sets. And we can think of this as some kind of subtle space. And when, due to another quantization, when light comes down to 186,000 miles per second, which is the known speed in the physical universe, then this infinity of different seeds populates what we call space. So space is granular with the basically populated by these seeds. These seeds are basically suggesting something that is in a very subtle format, and whatever is contained subtly becomes more material through the process of what we call time, so time being relative. And then there's a transformation from the subtle to more material, and that is basically suggesting that there's a property of energy. And then there's an arrangement between seeds and seeds, or the way things show up materially. And so it's suggesting that there is a property of gravity. When we look more deeply into this space-time energy gravity that emerges when light comes down to 186,000 miles per second, then we can further see that there's a correlation between what we call knowledge and space, power and time, presence and energy, and harmony and gravity. So basically, space-time energy gravity becomes a symmetrical phase of these four powers that we had suggested exist in the mathematical space defined by light traveling infinitely fast. Now, correlating the two parts that we went over the manifest levels of matter and life and the concrete scientific evidence that these are structured into four categories, all that can be viewed as having as function knowledge, presence, power, harmony. But then when we look at this light matrix, we're also seeing that this presence, power, knowledge, harmony is instrumental to the way things show up in the cosmos. And in work that I've done elsewhere, this light matrix is iterative. So whatever its output is at some point, and if we specify that by XU, then using that as an input the next time, then we come up with XT as a next output. So there's, in fact, an iteration by which all these different layers are created. And this suggests a quantum-based source of energy. So there's something that's evident over here in this light matrix that propels the emergence of this. And there's an energy, an organizing energy that then determines how these properties of light show up materially. So there's an organization due to this quantum-based source of energy. Now, if this is the case, there's got to be a way to detect it. So here's a scheme to detect what I'm proposing to be OQE. So if we think about the level of a cell, we know that the relative percentage of the four molecular plans is approximately in the following proportions. So proteins is 40%, lipids 30%, polysaccharides 25%, and nucleic acids is 5%. And therefore, we can say that since proteins are an embodiment of presence and the most prevalent structure in the cell, molecular plan of the cell, this implies that there's an OQE of presence that's dominant as compared with the other OQEs of knowledge, power, and harmony. Now, just as a side, on the other levels, we can also see that the electromagnetic spectrum, the most common color is red, and this can be related to presence. At the level of quantum particle, the most common quantum particle is photon. That can be related to the OQE of harmony, gluon being representative of harmony. And electrons is also a very prevalent quantum particle, which is a lepton that is related to the OQE of power, but photon definitely being dominant. And at the level of atoms, we have hydrogen and helium that are both the OQE of power, and these are the most abundant. So therefore, when we look at the dominant OQEs, just summarizing, at the electromagnetic level, it's presence. At the quantum particle level, it's harmony. The level of atoms, it's power. The molecular plan level, it's presence. So to prove the existence of OQEs, for example, if we look at the molecular plan level, then it should be possible. So if we hypothesize that the presence OQE is the most prevalent, and then we construct a device from another level where whether the electromagnetic spectrum or quantum particle or atom levels, then bringing that device close to a cell or reading the cell in a particular way, it should show the predominant OQE as being present. So going a little deeper into these devices to detect OQEs, so if we just consider the electromagnetic layer device, then we can hypothesize that this would be comprised of 4 nanowire constructed chambers attuned to light of different frequency. Now, the mechanism to facilitate that attunement would need to be specified. And as I suggested, there's variations on possible frequencies that would be anchored to. And the 4 envisioned frequencies, we can relate them to the visible colors red, yellow, green, violet. That research indicates that red has a correlation with presence, yellow with power, green with harmony, and violet with knowledge. So we automatically have then, if we can create this kind of nanowire constructed capacitor chambers, then a way to begin to detect the OQE. And further, if the electromagnetic detection device were placed in proximity of a living cell, then the presence chamber should light up because the dominant OQE in the living cell is that of presence. Now, as a side, we know, for example, that when we look at a cell under a microscope, that it's translucent. So actually being able to see something red in this detection device would not be related to the visible color that is emanated from the cell. Similarly, we can create detection devices using atoms and molecular plans, also by leveraging this nanowire constructed capacitor chambers. So in summary and conclusion, this paper reviews the structure of molecular plans in cells, groups of atoms, quantum particles, and the electromagnetic spectrum, suggesting that there's a common pattern that connects these layers together. This pattern is a functional pattern that relates to the concepts of knowledge, power, presence, harmony, that is suggested to organize the architecture of these four levels. The root of this functional fractal pattern is found in a conceptual model that generates different mathematical spaces created by imagining light to travel at different constant speeds. The mathematical spaces imagined existing when light travels at different constant speeds is seen to be the stuff of quantum levels. We have, as I went over when we reviewed the light matrix, different processes of quantization, and there's a root knowledge, power, presence, harmony pattern that is the origin of this organizing force, and it is instrumental in thinking about this organizing quantum energy that's behind all subsequent layers of matter and life that are seen as computational outputs of this light matrix. Further, the OQE is seen as a new category of quantum phenomena that can be materially detected. The detection devices are proposed to consist of capacitor chambers attuned to the essence of each of the knowledge, power, presence, and harmony OQEs. And further, these devices can be created leveraging architectures natural to each of the electromagnetic, quantum particle, atom, and cellular layers. So you'd have four different types of detection devices. And the proof that OQE exists is proposed to be tied to the use of a detection device made from the architecting structure of another layer than the one the OQE is being tested for. So hypothetically, when we bring an electromagnetic constructed device in the province of a cell, then the presence capacitor chamber should light up. So this new perspective on quantum energy will open up avenues for further exploration and potential applications in various fields, not limited to, but certainly containing physics, chemistry, biology, systems engineering, and modeling. Thank you.